Hi everyone, I'm Frank and this is Maxwell. Today we're presenting our project, PlayItOrNot. It's about helping gamers make smarter purchases on Steam, buying games they will actually play. So Steam is one of the largest PC gaming platforms in the world. And during big sales, a lot of people buy games they never touch. And in fact, over $19 billion worth of games on Steam have never been played. So our goal is to help players answer one honest question before checkout. Will I actually play this game? Here's a quick demo. We built a Chrome extension that hooks into the Steam page. So when the user clicks Add to Cart, it shows a message that tells the user how likely he will enjoy the game. So to understand each game, we collect two kinds of data from the games that the user owned. On the left is game metadata, things like the playtime, category, description. On the right is the player feedback, things like the user-defined tags and the recent reviews. And together, they show what the game is and how it feels like to the players. So we collect data from over 700 users. And this gives us about 47,000 games with 2 million reviews. And this is the data set we built on, and we also upload it to Hugging Face, so it's easier to inspect.
So what did we do with all that data? First, we had a human labeling process where we took 10 of those users randomly sampled, and we labeled their game profiles based on a theoretical framework from the literature on different preference features in video games. Social features, manipulation and control, narrative and identity, reward and punishment, and presentation. An example, one of these labeled user profiles is on the right over there. We also hand-selected 5 different games within 6 different genres to perform another evaluation test, which I'll go into more detail later.
So here's how the system works. So first, we sample a few games that the user play a lot and barely played it. Then for each game, we also collect some reviews and store into a vector database. And then we pull the top 5 reviews for each feature, and then send them along with the game's metadata to the extraction agent. So the agent produces a profile shows how the user feels about each features. And then when the user wants to buy a new game, we also collect that game's information and then send to the analysis agent, which generates a recommendation and the reasons behind it. And then finally, a credit agent checks that message before sent to the user.
How did we evaluate it? We have 4 different metrics of success. Since this is a qualitative recommendation process, we structured it within qualitative trustworthiness criteria. The first point is credibility and classification accuracy. How well does it work on pre-existing user libraries? There's within genre similarity. So within those hand-selected genres, we want the recommendations to be fairly similar. There's factual triangulation, which is a qualitative one, which is, does the recommendation only use information following from the user profile in the RAG? And then also the second qualitative one is correct framework use. So does the extraction agent actually use the preference feature framework in a correct way? For the results, I'll note that these are only for the up to the analyst agent, not for the critic agent. This is for classification accuracy. We got over 80% on both the training and test data, which is, in our opinion, very strong for a qualitative recommendation. It's something that's hard for humans to do. On the within genre tests, what I'd like to focus on here is the range of values. The thresholds we have are generally 0.3 apart. So for most of them, the thresholds are pretty good. The card games one is a little bit off. However, there is a strong reason why. There, one of the games was pointed out as very difficult, which this user enjoys in their games. One example where it underperformed. This is actually a decent recommendation for the user. However, there's issues with its reasoning for why it made its decision. It pointed out its process in the way that it made a recommendation, which isn't something the user really cares about. The user doesn't care that reviews provided little insight into their habits. They care what the reviews might say. So in this case, it would have been better if it didn't point that out. What did we observe? First, we had that good accuracy, again, about what we would expect for humans. However, sometimes it struggled when the preferences in user profiles were complex or reviews were noisy. Also, it generally over-relied on reviews for reasoning. Within the RPG category, there was one specific game where it drew down the score for something the user would really like, because it had negative reviews. However, the recommendations generally match our expectations for whether they would or wouldn't like a game in terms of that classification accuracy point. Next time, we would also look into collecting more diverse profiles, including middle engagement users. We looked at the top users on Steam who have very old profiles, so the games that the profiles are created on might not accurately represent their current behaviors. We would also try to integrate more games into the hand-created profiles. We have 10 played and 10 unplayed games forming those profiles, which for these very large users may not be totally representative. However, we did find that they were fairly consistent. Thank you very much for listening.